Hey, and welcome to another episode of our Compliance After Hours. Again, your host, Josh Matheny, CEO over here at Smart Training. And David's been gracious enough to come back and explain a little bit more of the nuances of compliance with us today. And really, I'm excited with this topic because this is where a lot of the fear comes into play. We've been talking a lot about those inspections that we've done over the last years, but specifically over 500 this year. I don't know that there's anybody in the industry that's done more inspections of a dental practice than us this year. And that's given us a lot of really interesting data. And what we find time and time again is no matter what your office looks like, there's going to be something that OSHA can find. And so as we were discussing that, we started talking really about what does an OSHA inspector come in for? Why are they coming in? What does it look like? How do you handle it? So with that kind of queued up, David, let's get into it.
Our musings from a padded room. Here we go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different reasons, different things that could bring an OSHA inspector to your office. Although it's not the most common thing in the world for them to come out. Usually you're going to get a letter. But without putting the cart ahead of the horse, the things that are going to bring them out there, it can be things that even seem benign, like maybe your hygienist or your assistant opened up some instrumentation prior to your patient being in the room. We all know since COVID, patients have sort of, bless them, they've become kind of the experts, right? So they might walk into a room and see open instruments and start questioning maybe your sterilization processes. They may say, did they wash their hands before they gloved up? I saw them coming in going like this. Was that alcohol? Was that, they don't know what's allowed and what is. They haven't taken our training courses.
Oh, but they're all experts, aren't they?
They are. They are.
Mind.
They are, and bless them for it. They are.
Yeah.
But those are typically some things that maybe a patient might see. When you start thinking about team members, that's kind of a...
So hold on, you're saying that these patients are going to get OSHA involved. I thought OSHA only cared about employees.
Oh, they care about the whole enchilada. What you'll end up seeing sometimes, and this is interesting because a lot of people don't realize this, OSHA has to follow up and investigate any complaint. Now, how are they getting those complaints? Our patient says about the instruments like we talked about.
Yeah.
They might go to the Department of Health. They might go to the state dental board. They might go to who knows who they're going to. And that agency might not have an enforcement arm. In fact, they probably don't. They don't. So they're going to take that complaint and say, let's send it up to the Department of Labor. It happened at a work site. It happened at a job. We'll send that up there. They can use the general duties clause to investigate any hazard, any incident, anything in an office.
Wow. I've said for years that you're one disgruntled employee away from an OSHA inspector, but you're saying disgruntled employee or patient.
Yeah.
That's a little terrifying.
Yeah. Especially, we get those patients in the practice where we it's maybe some clinical experience speaking here. You get the patients you're a little worried about when they come in, and that's going to be maybe your new patient. Right? Going to be maybe that long-time patient who's has extra scrutiny or is really paying attention. It might even be one that in a former life was an assistant, was a hygienist, maybe a doc that comes in the practice.
Yeah.
Right? So you bump into that sometimes, and those can be your biggest challenges when it comes to any kind of item that could lead to a complaint.
Wow. So a complaint happens. Walk me through what steps happen once a complaint is received.
Okay. So let's say that it was, we'll use the example of our instruments open on a tray. I think that's probably the easiest one. Patient sees that, says, you know what, maybe I'm going to reschedule my appointment. Oh, something came up, I have to go. Maybe they file that complaint through the Department of Health's website. Department of Health looks at that, like I'd mentioned. They kick it up to the Department of Labor because they don't have an enforcement arm. And they send a note saying, hey, this is what the patient said. They said instrumentation was open, possibly dirty, it's going to spread infection to the community. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll say something like that. Department of Labor sees that. They say, we have to investigate everything.
Yep.
Okay. So they're going to lead by contacting the office. They're either going to, usually they make a phone call first, introduce themselves, say, hey, we're going to fax something over. Do you have a secure email that we can, transmit something to you? And we're going to need you to respond to this item in 4 to 5, I think it's 5 business days now.
Okay.
So the office will receive that item, whether fax, email, and I hope if they're one of our folks, they've taken care of everything and it's not a thing, it's a misunderstanding.
Yep.
But let's assume that it's not, anyhow. They get that letter. They're going to go ahead and read through it. There's going to have maybe 3, 4, 5 bullet points on there. And these are going to be items that are based off that little message. But they're going to take a look at it from maybe the CDC's angle or maybe ANSI, depending on what it involves. If it's an eye wash like we talked about prior, or in this incident, the trays, they're going to look at the CDC info. The items they're going to be looking for is, do you have an exposure control plan? Do you have an infection control coordinator in your practice? Has your team, your clinical team, the whole team, completed training on infection control?
Before they get started with any work, right? That training has to be done.
Yeah.
So they're pulling in all these different items from maybe a simple complaint about instruments being open.
Mm-hmm. And you have 4 to 5 days. And I'm talking not just to answer this, but to craft a nice detailed letter, to take photos, to pull your certifications, to verify all this information. It's not just I checked off yes and I sent it in. Like, this is going to change your practice's life for 3 or 4 days while you're dealing with this.
Yeah,
and
sounds like it.
With any luck, it's going to change the culture in your practice going forward too. Like, we don't, we sometimes in this industry and what we do, you can come in there as an inspector or you can come in there as an advisor.
Yeah.
Right. We want to advise folks and maybe hit this stuff before the fact instead of saying, this is a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem, fix it. That's what they're doing. They're inspecting. So if we're doing our job and we're ahead of the game, we're advising, and you're not bumping into these issues.
Yeah.
But you're going to have that patient, you're going to have that incident, that whatever happens, and you're going to have to resolve it. And that's how you go about that process.
Now, that we talked through phone or even email. What happens if they just walk in the door? What are my options? How can I make sure that I handle that appropriately? Okay,
first thing you want to do is you need to have a code word, and you scream out, exit, run, and everybody runs. But now, the reality, if they do come into your practice, they're going to have their business card with them. They're going to go to the front office, present it to the manager or whomever's up there, and they're going to say, I'm so-and-so from the Department of Labor. We're here for an investigation for a complaint that we'd received. Is your OSHA lead available? And then hopefully you have an OSHA lead at that point. If you're one of our folks, you've got somebody. And call us, of course. That person's going to come up and talk with that agent who's coming out, and they're going to ask to walk through the facility. And they're not just looking at A, B, C, or D. They're looking at the whole alphabet and a handful of numbers. They're looking at everything you got.
Yep.
Okay. And they're asking for all your records. They're asking for all your training records. They're asking for all your written programs. They're asking for your maintenance and documentation logs. It's not just one thing.
So this sounds a bit like a financial audit. Once they're introduced and they're exploring, they follow every thread to its end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've unwound a lot of sweaters. They're gonna tear into everything, and these aren't bad people. They're not. At the end of the day, if you're doing everything you need, and one of them does happen to walk through the door, it's going to be easy to correct.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know. I mean, that's just the nature of compliance. A lot of our docs, and a lot of docs in general, practice owners, they have an idea what they need to do, but they went to school for dentistry, for oral surgery, for whatever, maybe even business management with that. They didn't go for compliance. They didn't go for safety.
Yeah.
What they're learning is kind of secondhand, maybe through people, or with any luck, they've contracted someone to kind of work with them through these things before they become things.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And it sounds a lot like what I've seen, even for like a police officer. If you're doing your best and you're showing good faith effort, you're being respectful, then usually you're going to get through that and it's not going to be a big deal. But if you don't have things in place, if you are being a little disrespectful or just combative, then they're going to find something, and instead of informing you, you need to fix this, they might throw the book at you.
You might even end up with a disorderly conduct if you're not careful. Don't kick when they put you in the car. No, you're so right with this. And if you have the right culture in the practice, you can get these things, it can happen, and you can hit it in stride and just solve the issue and move on. If you're following what you need to do, and even if you're asking questions in one of these situations, the more engaged you are and the more willing you are to meet them with these issues and resolve them, the better off you're going to be. There's a lot of instances where if you look at the violations by establishment on the Department of Labor website, you look at that website, you're going to see citations that were issued, and then you'll see a remediation period. And then within 30 days or whatever, you can go back and visit that, and you'll see that the fine is dropped to zero because the issue's been resolved. And that's what they want. At the end of the day, keep them safe. Do what you're supposed to do. Everyone's happy. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to get fined. No one wants to shut down for the week.
Yeah.
It's easily avoidable.
Well, and the same is true with all things. It talks about if you're prepared, you won't fear, right? We read that in the Bible, and it's true throughout business. When you're prepared for things, then maybe there's something that you aren't aware of, but you're doing your best, and they're going to give you some grace on that, and you're going to be able to work through it. Amen. So at the end of the day, this whole chat kind of leads me to just reinforce the idea of making sure that I'm having that incremental improvement. And we got to take care of business, but we also need to make sure that we're taking time to take a step back and see where's an area where maybe I've let slip, or what's a blind spot that I've never been made aware of. And so I appreciate you guys out there coming and listening to find a couple of those blind spots, and really appreciate your time again here, David.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoy it. We all realize that we're not infallible, and we just go as we do and try and do the best we can.
Wonderful. Well, until next time, remember to work smart out there.